Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Saturday. Hope we had a wonderful week, and hopefully we're having a very restful weekend. I personally am so far, which is partially one of the reasons this video is coming out so late, but I was up really late last night catching up on some calculus homework, which is probably my least favorite thing to do. So I rewarded myself by sleeping in an extra hour or two this morning. So again, I do apologize that the video's out a little bit later, but again, rest is very important for everybody, including myself and including all of you. Now in today's video, we do actually have a lot to talk about. We've got one big time storm system kind of crossing the country right now, that likely bringing severe weather, flooding, as well as some pretty big time snow totals for some folks, and I think that's really going to signal the start of a bit of a pattern change going into next week back towards the snowy side of things, and by the time we get 7 to 10 days out from now, we could really see a very interesting pattern set up here for sections of the south. I think we could get back into a wintry pattern, and even for folks that haven't really seen any snow this year, especially the Carolinas and portions of Virginia here that haven't really seen any snow so far this winter, your time might be on the horizon here, and we'll talk about that, but again, all of that a little bit down the road, so we won't go too in-depth, but I definitely will mention it in this video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. Again, the pattern is picking back up, so I want you to be up to date. So definitely make sure to also hit that bell for all of the latest notifications when I upload videos, and that little bell icon will pop up next to the subscribe button after you subscribe. And also like the video and consider sharing it with somebody that you think might find it useful or interesting. There's a lot of weather nerds out there, including myself and many of you, obviously, if you're tuning into this. So again, definitely consider trying growing the community a little bit here. I think with all that said, we can go ahead and jump on into your forecast because, again, we do have a good bit to discuss here. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, starting off looking at satellite imagery, you'll notice here's our storm that I was talking about, right over kind of the heart of the south central part of the country, and it's got that shrimp look to it, if you will. And I love always kind of mentioning this. We see this a lot of times with tropical systems, but also mid-latitude cyclones kind of take on this same look, which makes it kind of easy to define, where the warm fronts and cold fronts are with it. And again, in this warm sector this afternoon, we could definitely see some strong storms here through the Carolinas, Georgia, and sections of Alabama as well, not out of the question. Now, to the north of there, eventually this will turn into a winter storm for some folks, and again, we'll talk about that in today's video as well. Now, outside of there, out west, again, we've just got a big plume of moisture and multiple storms continuing to slowly funnel on in. That has brought rounds of rain throughout the past week and will continue to do so this weekend, but we should see a little bit of a lull, I think, in a couple of days, and I'll show you that here in a moment as well. Now, taking a look at the watches, warnings, and advisories out there, as well as radar imagery, obviously. Well, here's our big storm, and again, a lot of rain falling here through Arkansas, down through Alabama, northern Georgia, and into the Carolinas. Much of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri seeing some rainfall as well out of this storm. And again, this is slowly working up through the Ohio River Valley, and eventually we'll kind of exit out through the Philadelphia, New York area, and that's whenever we could see winter weather. And that already being indicated by winter storm watches up for a big section of Massachusetts, southern Vermont, and New Hampshire as well under those winter storm watches. And likely this will be upgraded to winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories for much of the circled area here on your map. Now, outside of there, taking a look at some more of the advisories and such, we do have plenty of flood advisories or watches up for a big section of the country here, from Atlanta back towards Birmingham, up into Knoxville, and into much of West Virginia and southwestern Virginia. Could see some flooding this afternoon out of this storm system as it moves on through, and you can see behind it and all the rain we've already gotten this week. Look at all of these river flood advisories from Texas through Louisiana, Mississippi, up through Arkansas, from all of that rain we've seen this past week, and definitely going to be problematic and continue to do so throughout today before luckily again we get a little bit of a lull here later on. And we do also have some dense fog advisories north of there through northern Illinois, Indiana, northwestern Ohio, much of Wisconsin. And I didn't realize this, but a meteorologist here in, I think, Illinois made a very good point. This has actually, on record, been one of the foggiest weeks we've seen in a very long time. And all of that kind of happened due to that very cold air we had last week and then all of that moisture that got thrown over top of it. Whenever you have a very cold air mass at the surface and a lot of precipitation, it's very easy to get that fog. And that's why we had so many dense fog advisories this week. So just kind of a little bit of interesting tidbit of information there. Okay, let's talk about the West now. Again, we are seeing more rounds of rain, and that has been a big theme for the past couple of days, and will continue so into this afternoon. And here we go, right this afternoon, it's still raining good through much of Washington, Oregon, Northern California, with again snow in those highest peaks there through the Cascades. Now, it should stay relatively scattered in nature. This is going into this night, or going into tonight, becoming slightly more scattered, maybe not quite as widespread, before eventually, I think, by the time we're waking up tomorrow, we'll get into a little bit of a lull here. You'll notice a little bit drier than what we're seeing today, outside of maybe Idaho and the eastern parts of Washington and Oregon, where that storm system's kind of moving on through. But throughout the afternoon tomorrow, you'll notice much nicer conditions out west compared to what we've seen today. And that will continue into the overnight of our Sunday. And even by the time we're waking up Monday morning, still nice. Most of those showers staying offshore a good bit. So definitely a little bit of a lull here on the way. We've got to get through today. But I think as we get into tonight, especially into tomorrow, and even tomorrow night into Monday morning, nicer conditions on the horizon here. Now, snowfall totals out west, really the big winners here again will be into the northern Cascades here. A big chunk of snow on the way, likely upwards of a foot in isolated spots there, with lighter totals here into the higher terrains of Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana throughout the next 48 hours or so. Rainfall totals, again, definitely a good bit on the way still here through Washington and Oregon, but again, most of this falling today. I think, again, that lull on the way, but a good couple of inches of rain possible there, and even down into Northern California, could see a little bit of rain out of this as well, but south of there, really all dry from San Francisco down through LA, San Diego, and even back towards Vegas, Salt Lake City, and Phoenix. So, again, the southern section of the west, much drier than the northwestern section. Alrighty, now let's kind of talk about this storm system, and that's all going to start with some severe weather today. I'm going to take a quick sip of water really quickly. Alright, sorry. I'm actually feeling a little bit under the weather today, so I might have to take a couple sips of water, but either way, it'll be okay. We'll get through it. Back to the severe weather today, though. Again, we do have a slight risk actually here for much of southern Alabama here and into the northern Florida Panhandle, and a new area under the gun here in this marginal risk. Now stretches into the western Carolinas from Charlotte down through Greenville, Spartanburg, Atlanta, and I just realized I drew a heart by accident, but either way, there you go. So, definitely could see some strong storms out in that area as well, and that does include the threat for some tornadoes today. Now, it's not an off-the-chart threat, but the Storm Prediction Center here is indicating a big enough threat worth mentioning here, especially in the Florida Panhandle, back through Mobile up towards Montgomery, and then even up into the Atlanta, GSP, Charlotte area, and even into Chattanooga and sections of northern Georgia. Now, one thing I will mention is NATOcast, which is not the Storm Prediction Center, but it's just kind of a weather model that a lot of people like using, kind of highlights this area a little bit more than maybe the Storm Prediction Center is. So if you're watching in upstate South Carolina or even the Charlotte area, don't let your guard down. We're going to definitely have some ingredients that could produce some strong storms this afternoon, including an isolated tornado, not out of the question. So I don't want you to be caught off guard by that. So take this 2% quite serious throughout the day, and definitely just have a way to get those watches, warnings, and advisories. Alrighty, now kind of taking a look here at flooding potential. That is also something we're watching. We have a slight risk of flooding along the I-85 corridor from Atlanta up through Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, and then into Blacksburg's, kind of the Blacksburg area, and then into Knoxville as well. Could see some flooding in that yellow area, but even in the green area, you'll notice here also having a threat for some, flooding potential this afternoon from Raleigh up through Roanoke, back into much of West Virginia, Nashville, Birmingham, and even down into the southern suburbs of Atlanta. So again, this storm system bringing a lot of rain. We've already seen a lot of rain this week, so those rivers are quite high, and the soil is also very saturated. So it's not going to take too much to cause some flooding concerns here. All right, now taking a look at, if I back the map up at least here, taking a look at the next couple of days here and what we're expecting with this storm system. We'll start right here. And again, the storm really kind of right here at the moment in time of me recording this, and we'll slowly work off towards the north and to the west today. But as I move this ahead into time, you'll notice those strong storms continuing to work through Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas here. This is about 3 o'clock this afternoon. You'll notice any of these storms here could produce strong straight line winds and a quick isolated tornado not out of the question as well, while we're dealing with just a good old-fashioned shield of rain to the north here through Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Arkansas, and into Missouri there. Now, moving this further ahead into time, about the time the sun is setting here, some of those strong and feistier storms moving on through upstate South Carolina, the Charlotte area, back down towards Macon. Again, watching this kind of circled area on your map for some strong storms during the afternoon and evening hours of tonight as this line pushes on through. But luckily, as we get closer towards midnight, any kind of severe weather threat should begin to die down a little bit, and we'll now be just dealing with a rain threat and now transitioning to a snow threat. You'll notice already some blue showing up on your map here into Indiana and sections of Ohio. That rain could try to change over to a quick wet burst of snow here. Not out of the question. I think it's even likely here as we go into kind of the early morning hours. So you'll notice that green transitioning to blue here through much of Indiana, sections of Michigan, and likely even, I think, parts of Ohio here. And at the same time, what might start as some rain quickly transitions to some wet snow as well along the Pennsylvania and New York border here, as we get some of as we get some of that thermodynamic cooling here throughout the early morning hours of tomorrow. Now, winter storm impacts will really kind of crank up tomorrow afternoon. This is about noon, 1 o'clock. You'll notice here, low pressure now just off the coast here, and to the north, we've got this big shield of precipitation, as well as enough cold air that we've got a very nice band of snow from kind of the Pennsylvania-New York border up through much of Massachusetts, southern Vermont, and southern New Hampshire. Now, at the same time, on the backside of the storm, cold air funneling in, and we're also going to get some northwest flow snow here in North Carolina, West Virginia, even portions of Tennessee there. The mountains there could see some snow out of this. And as we go through tomorrow evening and afternoon, it's still snowing here into the interior northeast, likely further north into New York through the Finger Lakes, the Catskills getting in on some snow, much of Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Massachusetts. Now, we will have to watch this rain-snow line. This storm is going to kind of strengthen a little bit, which is going to increase that warm air advection here off the Atlantic. That'll kind of try to beat back that rain-snow line just a little bit. So that could be problematic for some snow totals, but I still think most of us in western Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York State, plenty of snow out of this one. And as we've moved this further ahead into time, overnight Sunday into Monday, we're still dealing with northwest flow snow in West Virginia and North Carolina and Tennessee. And we've also still got a nice band of snow, although breaking up a little bit, becoming a bit more scattered in nature here into the interior northeast throughout the overnight Sunday. And by the time we're waking up Monday morning, we should have some scattered snow showers left over here through, much of the Northeast, including portions of the I-95 corridor here. I think Monday morning we could see snow in Boston, eastern Massachusetts, through Rhode Island, Connecticut, and even into Long Island. Could see some snow, again, on the backside. Not too much in terms of accumulation for those folks that haven't seen a lot already. But throughout the day, again, this storm could crank up a little bit more, and we could get a quick band of heavy snow, again, in some of these coastal areas, including, like I said, Long Island, Nantucket, Montauk, and, Rhode Island and Connecticut, and again, just kind of surrounding areas of coastal New England. And that should continue throughout the day on Monday before finally we clear out overnight Monday into Tuesday with just a couple leftover scattered snow showers, including some scattered northwest flow snow. All right, how much snow are we talking? This is now through Sunday morning, so this is not including the snow that we might see kind of on the backside here into New Jersey, New York, and sections of Connecticut and Rhode Island. But kind of for the first brunt of the storm, the biggest winners here into western Massachusetts, southern Vermont, New Hampshire, and into kind of the Catskills here with some totals getting near half a foot. Not out of the question. Isolated spots could hit 8 inches of snow out here as well. But also seeing some snow here on the northern border of Pennsylvania with New York State there, a couple inches not out of the question as well. And even some snow here into southern Maine, a couple of inches as well, where we've got the cold air just lacking some of that precipitation. Now, further south, northwest flow snow will also definitely be something we watch here, and, totals could get upwards of a couple of inches in West Virginia and down through the highest terrains of those northwestern-facing slopes into Tennessee and into North Carolina as well. So again, a big change from the 70-degree temperatures we were just seeing yesterday, right back to northwest snow come later this weekend and into early next week. Now, one thing I am going to pull up on the fly here, and I do apologize that this is kind of last second, but I do want to mention the snow on the backside of that storm system in the northeast. So you guys kind of get to see a little bit of the behind the scenes here on how this works. Here we go. All right. So unfortunately, I forgot to add this in already, but you will notice again on kind of the backside as that snow cranks up a little bit, some of those totals do increase a little bit more throughout the day Monday here into coastal Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York. Again, I don't know if it'll be much more than what this is showing, but I think specifically places here into eastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island could pick up a couple of quick inches of snow. Areas further down I-95 though towards New York City, Philadelphia, likely not much in the way of accumulation out of this. Just wanted to quickly mention that because I forgot to talk about it there. All right. Now, with that said, let's kind of talk about the future here a little bit going into next week, and it could get interesting here. Again, we've got snow this weekend, and here's that storm you're seeing on the map right here. You'll notice, obviously, kind of what we just talked about, bringing snow for some folks, and eventually clearing out of here by the time we hit Tuesday. Now, at the same time as that is clearing out, we could get another round of precipitation out west. I do want to mention that. I know plenty of you are watching from out west, and I don't mean to forget about you. It just, unfortunately, we've got a lot going on in the east as well, and living here, I'm kind of a little more prone to talk about it. Definitely early next week, you'll notice another round of precipitation up through Washington, Oregon, and eventually a bigger storm system later next week that we'll talk about here in just a second. Now, looking back at the east here, excuse me, we do have a bit of a clipper system that is showing up on the models here through the Wednesday time frame. You'll notice low pressure showing up here. That could bring a quick burst of some light precipitation, mainly mountain snow, I think, here from Pennsylvania down through North Carolina through, again, the Wednesday time frame of next week before eventually that gets off the coast here. Now, at the same time, another big-time storm system working in out west. This one likely a lot more reminiscent of what we saw earlier this week, bringing big-time mountain snow and coastal rain, even all the way down into California here during the middle part of next week. Now, as we go a little bit later into next week, that clipper system that moved on through tries to work offshore, but another clipper system kind of dives out of Canada here. And this one is going to be very important. Some of our models have tangled up the two systems, but as of late, they've been a little bit more separated, so I'm leaning towards that a little bit more. But by the time we get about a week out from now, we've got a very interesting setup that we need to talk about. A clipper system in the northeast, which isn't really as important in the precipitation side of things. It definitely could bring some snow showers, but look what comes with it. This big shot of cold air, you'll notice by these blue isobars kind of circled around each other here. That's going to dive southward and eventually funnel in some cold air into the southeast, specifically the Carolinas and Virginia. And at the same time, as that's happening, that big storm system that impacts the west during the middle of next week kind of gets out here into the Four Corners and is eventually going to try to probably slide here through the southern tier of the country. And that combined with some cold air funneling in could lead to some very interesting things here that I'll show you in just a moment. Now, just to quickly mention, that was the European model. The GFS model shows more of the same. Again, clipper system around Wednesday, bringing some mountain snow to the Appalachia chain. Eventually, that works offshore. At the same time, a bigger storm works out west. And eventually, here we go. Here's that next clipper system with that shot of cold air into the northeast going into next weekend. And at the same time, we've got low pressure and all sorts of troughing out west getting its act together. And these two could merge, again, about kind of the time frame between February 4th and 6th is what I'm watching. And a lot of the models picking up on that here as well. So here we go. Let's time this out a little bit more. This is going into that time frame. Here we go. February 4th, that afternoon. As I talked about, we've got troughing here into the northeast. That is going to try to kind of help funnel in some cold air. And at the same time, we've got a storm system riding right through the southern tier of the country. And a lot of our models are kind of syncing these two up here, right here around February 5th or so. The 4th to 5th time frame and even potentially into the 6th. Both of these ingredients definitely could hook up, and should that happen, we could see something kind of like this. This is the overnight European model run. I'm going to move this all the way out ahead into time, and here we go into next Saturday, Sunday. This is the 4th into the 5th. And you'll notice we've got that cold air damming. We've got this big mass of cold air out east and even getting into the southeast. We've got low pressure forming and getting quite strong after working on through the desert southwest here. And then we've got snow breaking out through sections of the Carolinas, Virginia, Kentucky, and other areas of the southeast here. And this is a very interesting look. Again, the cold air and the moisture have to link up here. It's what we always talk about. And the European is showing this, again, very far out there. So take this with a grain of salt. And the GFS model is also showing the same thing, which I guess I'll have to go back and find here. Here we go. But at the same time frame, GFS shows the exact same setup, just a little bit more suppressed in nature, but same general idea. Cold air to the north, storm track to the south, and we get snow to break out through sections of the southeast, including folks that have not really seen any at all this winter. And the GFS even kind of continues that pattern later on, deeper into February. Now, taking a look at snowfall chances here, this is, again, about 10 days away, so take this with a grain of salt, but our European ensemble members, they're showing the setup here. We've got places getting past 15% chance of seeing accumulating snowfall here into the mid-Atlantic and into the southeast from really South Carolina northbound, I would say, up into the Virginias. Now, obviously, these are very small numbers. If I tell you on a normal day we've got a 10 to 20% chance of rain, you'll say, okay, I'm not bringing the rain jacket. But with this being so far out and so many ensemble members already picking up on it, it sure could be easy to trend this in the right direction. And I'll tell you, climatologically speaking, we're bound for a good one in this part of the country. And the GFS ensemble members kind of agree with the same general idea, a little bit different on the placement and the totals. But again, you'll notice, nonetheless, snowfall chances increasing here through much of the southeast and mid-Atlantic as we get into that first week of February. So very exciting times ahead. And as I mentioned earlier, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. This is going to be a great opportunity for growth for the channel, and we definitely should pounce on it. So again, a lot of you are not subscribed but continue watching. So just make it easy on yourself. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and definitely make sure to like the video and comment. Let me know what you're seeing out there as well. Now, with that said, hope you have a great rest of your Saturday, and I'll see you all tomorrow.